I love the opening sequence. I love the playoff teaser here for the PCS 2022 Spring. Welcome back. My name's Asterix. I'm joined by Mr. Clement Shu. A quick rounder for you if you've missed out. We are in the middle of J-Team versus CFO. And before we go any further, CDBC Bank and Caliber, we thank you for being our sponsors. We love you, and I want one of those cards. Carry Live, Garena, and Right Games. Thank you for PCS League Operation. Clement is going to send me one of those cards, I've just decided. And, sir, let's just get this out of the way before we go to the next game. J-Team's draft, Clement, out of 10, what do you rate it?
I'd say like a 3. It had a very coherent strategy.
Generous.
It had a coherent strategy, so I'm giving it a 3, but nothing much beyond that. So yeah.
Now, there's got to be a reason why. Again, we talked a lot about J-Team's draft in game number 1. We're not just doing this to make fun. Doing this because, as you said, Clement, you know, yes, there was a coherent strategy, but it was very one-directional, and J-Team felt like they pigeonholed themselves when we were going through and rounding out the end of it.
Exactly, and right now we have J-Team once again going back to the blue side, and as we know about the blue side, it's mainly about picking up a coherent composition rather than playing against lane counters. So I do expect J-Team to, there's 2 ways they could shift. Either they could take what they had in game 1 and double down on that idea, make it into a full early game comp. You bring the Renekton Jason onto the top lane. You bring more like mid-game champions that are viable. You pick the things like the Syndra and the Zoe a little bit earlier, because let's be honest, no one's going to ban your Karma. You don't need to pick Karma and Caitlyn together whatsoever. So they could go that strategy, or I think the other route is to go with a more teamfight 5v5 centric strategy. And I have to say, the later strategy of going 5v5 has been very effective against CFO. Once again, CFO had a very turbulent second half of the split. They only managed to win against their first playoff team like on week 5, at the very end of week 5. So the teamfight comp that CFO has been dealing with, they have had a lot of struggles going up against that. So I would like to see J-Team shift and make things a little bit slower.
Okay. Well, making things slower is a good way to phase it, right? Because J-Team made it all about the speed in the early game in game number 1. As we round into the second draft, let's welcome you in with a very similar start. Lee Sin priority here in the series, Clement. We talked about it a little bit earlier. It's going to be massive here with the most played from Kongmere, from Gemini. A nice little takeaway, again, to start us off.
Yeah, I think Lee Sin is going to take priority over Viego in most of these drafts, just because Gemini is so proficient on it. And as we talked about, J-Team does like to play these sort of siege compositions where disengage is important, and Lee Sin does a very good job at that with the Dragon's Rage. So don't expect this one to change. The question really now is what CFO are going to opt into, because I feel like after game 1, they're sitting pretty. They weren't challenged whatsoever. They were able to keep their own play style, get the 4-1 intact, and just outscale their opponent. So this time around, they are shifting gears and going for the Viego, which is a champion I feel like requires a little bit more snowballing to get done right. J-Team, on the other hand, this is a very clear shift, going for the pure early game plan, and like we were talking about, picking up Uniboy's champion in the first rotation.
Yeah, again, not going for that, the Caitlyn Karma. Again, pigeonholing is what we talked about so much. We can now shift directions and set it Uniboy on comfort. Lil V as well. You could even say the same thing here. So, Clement, a much better direction this time around. And I want you to walk me through the rest of draft, because as things pivot quite a bit, we still don't have a support from J-Team. We need a solo laner up at the top side. Solo laners for CFO not picked up yet, so what do you want to see?
I would say that solo laners for CFO, the top lane is definitely going to come in last. And the mid lane pick is the one I'm most interested in, because if you look at the, if you go with the control mage, I think you actually lose too much on the bottom side. A Jinx cannot win a Xayah lane, and Viego does need a little bit of help against the Lee Sin early. So I think there's a very high possibility that we are going to see something like a Mission LeBlanc or a Syndra come into effect. I feel like it has to be something a little bit with more early game strength, but Syndra's already banned, so I think LeBlanc is the most likely answer here.
Okay, well, let's see if LeBlanc ban comes through from J-Team at the very least. They've been so concerned about banning away that top side. The Camille ban second game in a row against Rest. We've even got the Jace ban against Driver, which I love. Not many PCS top laners playing Jace at the moment, Clement. Like, it's here and far between. Most played out of Driver, so putting him on the back foot a little bit when we already see quite a bit of range built up for the J-Team draft to start us off.
Exactly. J-Team, one of their best comps has been the poke comp, and Jace has been a huge part of that alongside with Zoe. You never want to get let that one through. We have seen CFO actually answer this almost exact same comp from J-Team, and they went from a Malphite top lane. It did not work out. It got crushed in lane and wasn't that effective in team fights, but we do have to keep that in mind. That is something that Rest has potentially gone forward towards. I'm not a huge fan of the Orianna. I think the Orianna is, once again, a little bit slow. It doesn't have a good laning phase versus the Zoe. Will allow J-Team to roam around a lot. But it looks like CFO are just going to commit to just kind of a full late game strategy right now. They're not expected to win bot lane or mid, and I think they just have to hold on from this point.
Just hope maybe you get something good in the top lane, Clement, and Rest takes over. We've got a Gragas, though, and Gragas we know neutralizes lanes, so far for J-Team, a much better direction this draft. And you can say that quite easily, but I think it's a big step up.
I would have to concur. I think this is a much more playable draft. You have winning lanes early on. You have 2 of them, and you have good disengage, so you can set up siege poke very easily. You're expected to just barrel through the early mid game, and then you have a super powerful engaged champion in the set that can be very dominating in lane as well. So I like what J-Team has set up. It's very easy to play through. You have the bot push. You try to use that bot push. You take it into the top side. You get heralds. You siege. It's strong early to mid game. It does fall off late game for sure. I think if you look across the board, all 3 of these picks will have issues against their counterparts once it gets to 30 minutes. But the J-Team plan is, hey, we're just not going to try and play until 30 minutes. It's a 28-minute game for us.
So bring the tempo in the early game versus CFO. And you're already mentioning there, I mean, Jinx, Orianna, even the Nara and the setup from Viego. Clement, it feels like this is CFO trying to play really slow again and just buy time.
Yeah, I feel like CFO, because they had such an easy time of a game 1 where they didn't have to show any of their cards, they are allowed to just test the waters with the game 2.
Yeah.
We have to remember in terms of our format, if you lose the game, then you get the side selection for the next game. So I read this as CFO testing out the waters to see if they can get away with this type of a draft.
Which is interesting, right? Because again, Mission played really well in game number 1, and it was on the Zoe versus Twisted Fate. We had a much more different matchup. It's kind of Uniboy's turn to bring back a bit of retribution here on his pick. And on something you were talking about a little bit earlier on what Uniboy does, what'd you say, 700 DPM? The most DPM in the league for a mid laner here.
Yeah, when he's winning, he's over 600 DPM. But when he's losing, that's cut almost to half. He's only 300. So and I mean, it's very important for them to get a strong lead. And personally, I feel like J-Team, most of their late game strategy is almost incidental. It mainly still builds off the lead that Uniboy has occurred.
He's 49 KDA, by the way, on Zoe. 100% win rate in the regular season. J-Team, as they've entered playoffs finally, now need to show us in the second game that they're here to play, because in game number 1, CFO, they took it nice and easy. They shut out J-Team's options, and we talked so much about draft dip. It was crazy. But as we enter you into Summoners Rift for the second time, with a 1-game lead, it doesn't mean too much here if J-Team get off their win condition, because here in the PCS Spring Playoffs, I feel like these teams are evenly matched, but in so many different ways, they flourish with their strengths. Uniboy on Zoe, Kongyue on an early ganking jungler, Clement. This is the team I know and love. As Uniboy and Kongyue are mid 2v2, that's the perfect setup that I need to hear if I were a J-Team fan.
Does bring back a lot of those mad game vibes from before, as they're going in with strong tempo, mid jungle across the board. I think the most important thing for J-Team in the early game is just to keep tabs on Gemini, the Viego here, because if you look across the lanes, none of these lanes are supposed to win out from CFO in the early game, so as long as you take the jungler out of the equation, it should be very easy to just scale up and move into the Herald stack.
Because the Herald stack seems pretty important for J-Team, especially when you talk about the winning lanes and how they want to pull the strength in. Run me through again a little bit about what Kongyue needs to do in this early game. Because if we're talking about a bit of a timer, if we're talking about J-Team playing, you know, with those winning lanes, where do you hit first? Is it what I said? Is it mid 2v2 that Kongyue should just be focusing towards?
Mid 2v2 is definitely a possibility. We have seen a lot of J-Team games open up with a 3-camp red buff gank from the Lee Sin, and you can tell that CFO is aware of that, as well as they have wards on both sides of the jungle. If that doesn't work out, I feel like Kongyue is main priority is just to keep tabs on Gemini, try to play him 1v1 as much as possible. And if he gets the 1v1, that means his lanes get the 1v1, and his lanes all win. So that's kind of the strategy for J-Team definitely in the early phases.
Junglers on opposite sides of the map for now. We'll track Kongyu and then see how early he pops up, at the very least for Gemini. The Lee Sin matchup, you already said, feels really nice here in the early parts and shutting out the Viegos. So kind of an emphasis on Kongyu, who has had a much better later end of the split here, Clement, as CFO. What are we looking at? Well, we got a bit deep, just waiting and expecting. Maybe they read the playbook as well, Clement, expecting that Kongyu might make an early appearance towards the bottom lane.
Yeah, they didn't have his jungle pathing, and I believe that was an unassisted start earlier on. I'm not exactly sure. I kind of forgot about what the start was. Okay, so it was unassisted start. So they just wanted to make sure Lee Sin wasn't there to mess up their tempo a little bit. And in the meantime, we do have this ward on the left side for J-Team. So we have seen this being done by Kongyu quite a bit. He wants to make sure the jungle isn't there, and then he could decide to ward hop or go in, but Uniboy misses the Everfrost, so opportunity does just kind of dissipate.
It's so silly, Clement. Why does Zoe get Everfrost at level 3? If that hits, that's a gate, that's a flash. But you're right, it does miss. But I don't understand, dude. Zoe gets the craziest things before she even hits level 6, before, first items are even built.
I could simplify that further. Why does Zoe exist? Like, that's
true.
Talking about big brain analogies. That one was the galaxy brain mode. Is why is she even here? And you can see Uniboy is actually kind of surprised that he's getting out-dueled here by Mission. Mission doing a very good job earlier on, keeping himself safe, not overextending, holding the wave towards him, as Viego now doing the counter jungling himself. I've got to say, CFO is actually surprising me with how well they're outplaying the early game.
Again, like Mission's lane, if you just come back to that, was so impressive in game 1. In this second game, you're right, on the Orianna, bit of the CS lead here as he starts building up the wave. Kongyu trying to head towards the bottom side while his top side camps are getting invaded. And look, he's spotted on a ward. Gemini picks up the stolen camps, goes back, earlier reset here. And Clement, further to your point, CFO, with a 400 gold lead here in the early game, based off of mid, based off of jungle, based off of top, having a really good start. The focus lanes that we always talk about when we talk about CFO.
Yeah, this is a great start for Rest especially. He has vision of the enemy jungler, so he can push to his heart's content on the top side, and he's always been the linchpin of CFO strategy, going for those 4-1 compositions. Kongyu is going to have a very sad day, as his camps are just resetting right now, and this is always not what a jungler wants to see, because it makes it very awkward when you're trying to go for your a second pass onto the top side, going from the bot side. So I think overall what we're going to see is J-Team, I feel like if they've had this draft, they have to double down on mid-jungle. This comp doesn't really work if mid-jungle isn't allowed to leave lane.
But I mean, Mission so far has been safe in his lane. He's still got his flash available, and Kongyu hasn't been able to find a way in. And especially since he's being tracked. Like, we have to talk about the early warding here from CFO. They've once again spotted out Kongyu. They know exactly where this Lee Sin's going, and Gemini pathing around it so well. As we look at the top side, Rest even having a great time. He's hit ulti! It's Nara against the wall, Driver in trouble through the gap! The building sinks down. That is collateral damage. Structural damage that Driver has taken.
So insane from Rest. He actually gets the AoE damage past the minion. The minion did block the boulder, but the AoE was still enough to basically snip at Driver and take him down. I guess that's just the bad things about having a very big hitbox on the Krakus right there.
Dude, that's huge. This is okay, Uniboy. I'm probably emoting about what just happened to the top side, because Rest is dumpstering Driver in this second game. This solo laner, dude, no wonder you said from the start of the split that Mission and Rest were the best within their role. I mean, they still hit the same feels, despite CFO towards the end of the split. You talked about them losing momentum, struggling a little bit. Rest still has that flair that we know and love.
Yeah, this is absolutely beautiful. Getting his level 6 off the minion for the Mega Gnar. Let's see which AoE ability he gets to use it. Oh, he gets it with the wall-up. That was so smart. Instantly wall-up into the level-up, into the Mega Gnar, chained into the crowd control. Very well done there by Rest. very intricate timings to get that CC chain off and just caught Driver completely off guard here. And I do want to mention the storyline between these players. When they were on the same team on J Team, Rest was the starter. For the most part, Driver only got to play tanks or sit the bench.
And I feel like, you know, Rest kind of showing why he's such a top-tier talent again. And CFO, look at this top laner. He ulties again, explosive cast used. But Rest is just throwing out buildings left, right, and center. This is so rough to watch. And as Rest finds yet another 1v1 to push Driver back, top lane now a big issue, Clement. It's not, you know, 3 winning lanes anymore. Mid is going well. Like, J-Team haven't been able to get mid 2v2 going. And CFO with a gold lead in this early game, when we talked about them being the ones who would play slow and have to survive the onslaught of J-Team's strength in this early game.
Yeah, I feel like J-Team's hopes are left in that bottom lane right now. This is Xayah's power spike. We do have the serrated Dirk against the Noon Quiver, so Xayah should be able to push this lane. I think J-Team, right now, they have to consider that as their only salvation. The mid lane has been going rather poorly, and I'm actually very surprised about this because Uniboy does get extra combat summoners, and he also has Kongyue as a Lee Sin, who packs a lot more pressure in the early game. But somehow CFO, just purely through Mission's laning strength, has been able to equalize this, and it does put J-Team in a... I hate to say it, but once again, it does seem like a very narrow win condition where they have to snowball out of the bot side.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Lil V had all the attention last game where it was all about him, but in a very different draft. So once again, we're in a similar position where CFO feel confident enough to contest. Uniboy throwing down trouble bubbles, but a CFO brute force here with the Mega Gnar. They're taking over the objective. Sonic Wave's going to connect. Kongyue wants to steal, but it resets instead. Rest gets the ulti, and once again, Driver has to send himself a taxi. As Uniboy's hit up with the depth charge, Kongyue over the wall is going to give a reset. And CFO, a massive J-Team running away. Well, Gemini won't stop. He's found Uniboy as well. The shockwave brings it in.
The double?
It's double kill. Gemini worth dying for that one. 5-1. And CFO are damn impressive in this series.
Absolute decimation in this one again. J-Team, they try to start the Herald first, but they end up leashing the Herald for CFO. And in that team fight, they were split on 2 different angles. They needed to be more patient on this and actually get sizable poke down. They went in onto the ramps, and Rest just caught them out so badly. Driver doesn't get to use his ultimate before falling down. And if you look on the right side as well, Mission is able to play 2 flanks. You know, he gets some damage on the left side, is able to still turn around on the right side. Uniboy doesn't find a full combo down here, and this is Gemini just going absolutely crazy. Even though he does go down, he makes sure that there are no defenders for the mid lane tower.
I love Gemini, just like, whatever, dude, at this point, it doesn't matter. Our CFO, Clement, almost 3,000 gold ahead, and I think we can go beyond draft, right? We can go beyond what the whole series has been about thus far. CFO's solo laners are so good at the game. And it does feel like we're tooting their horn, but, I mean, they're making it so that J-Team's options are so small. And in this game where Uniboy got his comfort pick, he got his Zoe that internationally fans know and love, and Kongyue even getting something strong in the early game, it hasn't mattered because Mission's lane's been great. Gemini has had some really smart pathing. They're ahead in a game where they should be being outbullied.
Oh, but here comes the 4v2, though. This could be very difficult for Shin to survive. Let's see how they play this.
Traps are good, though. He's found Enso on the backside, but the Facebreaker pulls him in. Shun now. Sonic waved in the ulti through, but the depth charge from Koala. Absolutely beautiful. It's a 1-for-1, but Uniboy comes on in, but Kongyue stays too long. Koala was clutch here. The man again getting traded off by Uniboy. But the fact it was a trade comes down to that Nautilus.
They sent 4 people in for Koala, and your Australian brethren actually outplays J-Team. They get 2 kills there. And this is huge for CFO. They get a free plate in the mid, they get another free plate in the top, and then you have Gemini here just pure dropping the Herald for the first brick gold, trying to race against the bottom side of Xayah. So CFO once again cut up trumps massively, and it all comes down to Koala and how much he was able to outplay the bottom side.
That timing was sick. Again, Clement, you know, this Nautilus in game 1 dies a lot, but game 2 is the beautiful way to start.
So there's no flash here on Enzo. He gets caught out on the Flame Choppers. Can't get the good face breaker to start off, but he still finds the ultimate. But watch this. Koala anticipates the direction here and gets the 3-man death charge to keep Kongyu underneath tower, get the second kill, and it forces Uniboy into this position to pick up and clean up after his teammates.
After everything committed, Clement, it was a 2-for-2 trade. It was even. And Koala now has a bounty. Koala. He's 3-1-2. And it's good to see that, you know, CFO, again, while J-Team are trying so hard to look for something in this early game, you got to give them some kind of props that they're being denied at every corner. Lil Vid was able to pick up kills there. So the one thing is that the AD carry where all the resources are going seems to be working out. But CFO's still with a massive gold lead in this early game. The rest of the map is on fire. And it's still going to be very hard, as you said, for Lil V to try and carry this game. We'll see what they can do around Dragon, because CFO are opening up for more opportunities.
Uniboy going to pop over, and actually gets a Sleepy Trouble Bubble. So good find on that part. And I think the game plan for now, CFO, their bottom lane, even with the Marsupial going 3-1-2, they're still not going to win that lane. So I think the best way they can deal with this is to just have Russ take the top lane tower as fast as possible, and then swap over. Or they could do what they're doing right now, which is basically force this into just a straight-up 4v4 fight, where they will have the lead.
Especially around the Dragon, right? I mean, CFO know that J-Team are going to be walking into this one. Wards spot them out. CFO still with great tracking again in this game. Uniboy hits Trouble Bubble. Kongyu now pathing from bottom side angle. We found the AD carry. Sonic Wave needs to connect. He flashes under. Dragon's Rage under the turret. Kongyu has found a crucial pick here in front of the Dragon. And finally something on the board here. But Clement, am I speaking too early? Rest is a bully.
Yeah, he knows the jungler isn't there. He's going to take the first brick gold for himself. And this is where the swap will come in. I feel like J-Team, they really needed to get that bottom lane tower down with the Mythic Power Spike before the swap was going to happen. But it seems like CFO were able to endure that one. They're sitting at a 4,000 gold lead right now. And if I'm CFO, the next couple of steps are fairly easy. I just make sure that Shun gets to farm up in the bottom side instead of playing against Lethality Xayah. And I just wait for all these big objective fights where I'm essentially up a full item at this point. So J-Team, I think that pick was great. It's a sign that Kongyu can definitely pull that off, but they need multiple more of those picks to really get back on the same footing.
Really want to see that proactivity come through from Kongyu. I mean, he picked the Lee Sin for a reason. Zenso wants to play aggressive down here. And Kongyu once again pathing towards Lil V and Enzo. So I'm kind of excited to see if J-Team can kind of bring this game back, because otherwise at this point, Clement, if the series keeps going like this, we're going to be done in about an hour and a half, because CFO have come in today with just class. Like, we saw this against Meta Falcon team, but I thought it would be such a different beast when we've got Uniboy, we've got Driver, who have had a pretty good split. Kongyu as well has really warmed up. But this just feels like CFO are the ones warmed up after destroying Meta Falcon team in the first round.
I personally feel bamboozled. I feel like I looked too much into the stats. I saw J-Team having actually a far superior early game compared to CFO, and thinking that, yeah, Uniboy and Kongyu are just going to get a free snowball every game and we will have a very back and forth series. That did not happen at all. I feel like I sort of underestimated how strong CFO actually were. I feel like in the second half of the split, they were purposely trying to play slow. We saw the Victor a lot. We saw the Orianna a lot for Mission. We even saw the Corki, which is rarely seen in the PCS, coming out for him. And I feel like maybe that was CFO putting on the training wheels and just trying to hone in on the 4-1, try to practice communication. And now that those weights are off, they get to show their true selves.
True. I mean, as well, like, we're into a best of 5 where I think a lot of teams change in best of 5s, right? Teams with a lot of experience, especially as Enzo walking in. Dredgeline actually connects the backline. Shockwave in the nick of time, but Lil V survives. But now Death Rocket onto Enzo. Big as well as Depth Charge will follow up and gets Koala another kill. Now for the reset on top of Uniboy. He's in the middle of no man's land. What's he doing there, Clement? As CFO find another troll bubble close to hitting Little V. CFO want to give more blood to the blood god.
Oh, what a good rotation from CFO. They see the catch happening against Rest in the top side, so they instantly go bot to intercept people rotating back here, and they find everyone they need. For some reason, Little V just...
Hello? Wow.
What?
Rest with the flank. The kick back.
It works?
It doesn't matter because Rest is huge. And Kongyue with the Sonic Wave, he follows through. Is he too deep? No, he goes on a journey. The blast code sends it through. His Koala now has 5 kills. Clement, it's a carry Koala in game 2.
Rest is BMing early. Usually he waits for the BM to happen when he's already at the enemy turret. The tier build, the double Zanya build, that's what he's been going for. But he's actually just starting the party early. I feel like he senses blood in the water, and he wants to deal like a devastating blow to J-Team's mental.
Oh, dude, if I was J-Team, I think there are so many things that would have already blown my mental wide open. This series is rough, and as we look at it again, Clement, J-Team wanted to face check.
How does
they were there waiting.
Little V always get tagged by Dredgeline in front of the face when he has the jump? He has the support right there. Props due to Koala. Like, his Dredgeline hitbox control has just been absolutely amazing. I don't think anyone would have been able to get that past the set in that scenario, but he finds it, forces Lil V off of the fight, they get a clean pickup kill, and watch this from Rez. There's just no regard for enemy life right here. He gets the extra flash, finds the kill, tanks the tower throughout the entire way, and then he even takes Kongyue on for a ride. He even survives the explosive cast afterwards. This has to be so incredibly frustrating.
Oh, dude. Again, I don't know how you recover from this, Clement. These first 2 games, frustrating is the key word for J-Team. It's not the J-Team I saw towards the end of the season. It's not the J-Team where I made a bold statement on broadcast, and I think it was week 6, saying, I think this team could go all the way to grand finals. That's where I put them. I put J-Team making a run here, beating CFO, because I had faith in Uniboy, Kongyue, the strength of the 2v2. We haven't seen that this game, even with the Zoe Lee Sin. It's been disappointing, which has been the complete opposite for CFO. Their lanes have been insane, and we can't say a bad thing as Koala just does a 180 no-scope. Down goes Kongyue. I didn't see the health bar disappear. I don't think he did either.
Is Koala going to end up with the most kills this game? I think it's going to happen. He's already at 5. Can we upgrade him? He's now the drop bear. He isn't Koala anymore. He's much more dangerous.
Dude, he should be building at this point, you know. Full AP as Rest is going to disrespect him the top side now. A little bit deep here. He's about to go into the Mega Knight. He ults the minion wave. Doesn't care about the boys. Instead, just wants to take the minions down with him. So he dies, going a little bit too far forward, while CFO are going to take up the Dragon in response. Even though it's a nice pick for J-Team, the Dragon's still going down. There's always a trade. And CFO are set up to move to match point here in the upper bracket. Clement, if they win this series, they move straight into semifinals.
Yep.
Straight into round 4, awaiting PSG versus DCG, the winner of that.
Yeah, that would be huge for CFO. I felt like CFO actually came in very rocky into the playoffs. We weren't sure what form they were going to show. They really didn't find their strategy until the last week of regular season, where they were saying, okay, we're going to hard commit to just playing the 4-1. We have terrible communication, and our early game is pretty hit or miss. So I think they were a team that started off strong because of their laning phase, had a massive power trough, fell all the way to 5th place, and then slowly clawed themselves back. But on the flip side, I feel like for J-Team, they actually got a little bit lucky. They caught a couple of these top-tier teams when they were still trying to find their identity. So
good point.
I feel like the overall results of the regular season might have been a little bit misleading. J-Team, a lot of their power spikes might have been against more of the bottom half of the team, where you got these beautiful early game stats, and now they're kind of getting caught flat-footed. Now we have to see J-Team reinvent themselves. If they're not guaranteed a lead from Uniboy and Kongyue, how do they build their compositions? I think that's going to be the biggest question in the upcoming games.
Because they've been putting a lot of eggs into the Lil V basket, right? Even in this game, you know, Lil V, it was the dive down bottom side. It was hovering constantly from Kongyue, sacrificing so many of his camps while Gemini just pushed ahead to an easy lead. I suppose he's casting the bottom lane drivers, just trying for something while Lil V's nearby, but they're not going to get anything. The rest of CFO are grouping up as well. And further to the point, Lil V is the one with damage at this point. 2.5 items strong, but look at all the damage sources from CFO in great positions. Clement, I struggle to see how you survive Orianna Burst, even Rest, who's got a Trinity Force. We've got the Jinx now. Shun is 2.5 items and has the range with the rapid fire cannon. It all seems too easy. We're going to see how CFO close this game out, or how J-Team can slow down the pace and just find something. I don't want this to be a stomp, Clement. I came to cast J-Team versus CFO. And right now, I'm getting an absolute stop. Koala going deep, dredge lines in. Enzo is tanked up towards the turret. The Death Rocket not being used just yet. He's going to hold on to it. J-Team still on the defensive path, but look at what Mission's doing mid.
That wasn't even his Shockwave ultimate.
Oh, Koala's in again. Well, that was his Shockwave, though. As Koala goes gold, he flashes away once again. MVP performs the Gemini's turn into the Fat Man. Lil V is up in the air, but he just don't care. The range from Rest. He's a sniper with the Gnar this game. As CFO have taken a pick, they've opened things up, and now they just want to break the base on the bottom side.
Driver must feel so frustrated this series. He's getting blind pick every game, getting destroyed by Rest, who, to be fair, I think is probably the strongest top laner in the PCS on an individual basis. So I feel like maybe J-Team, like if I'm the coach, mentally I feel like I need to reset Driver. I would be willing to go to red side just to give Driver a good game. And I understand why J-Team are going for blue side though. Because Uniboy does have a very small effective champion pool, they have to go to blue side so they don't have to ban the Zeris and, you know, the Renekton's, the Aries that have been cropping up. But that does come at the expense of Driver. Driver has to blind pick every game, and CFO, yeah, as tradition, is going to save the last pick towards Rest.
I'd be so upset because, you know, Rest has been huge on this Gnar. It's very rarely we see massive Gnar carry performances. Both PCS and, you know, when I normally cast LPL, I can say the same thing. It has been underwhelming. But I will not say that about Rest this game. The solo lane was massive. The dive through mid was disrespectful, but I love it. I love top laners that are balls to the wall, Clement. Like, this is the perfect Gnar game. And even though he's 1-1-5, it is easy to see that CFO have put a lot of trust in him, and the comms this game have been beautiful. They're channeling down mid once again. Clement, 40 seconds till the Dragon. J-Team, it's all for a play, all for a pick. They're trying to get an angle.
I don't see how it happens here, though. They lack the damage, and their engaged tools are very telegraphed. So, I'll be honest, I don't see a way they can come back. It seems like CFO have to make a massive mistake here. I feel like Uniboy has to get something insane, like an unsealed spellbook steal, maybe, onto the Baron for this game to even be close. But, again, J-Team are the early game comp, and they've just completely run out of options.
Well, they're trying to push out mid. They're trying to set up for Dragon. Their options limited, as you say. CFO moving into the pit, though. This will be Infernal Soul. And they've found Rest, but it's only Kongyue and Uniboy again. The mid 2v2. The jungle mid 2v2, I should say. We're seeing it now, but it doesn't really matter. Koala off of the wing. J-Team is split. Look, over the wall, there's Enzo. But Gemini's found him. They're like, hey, forget the Dragon. We don't care. Shun's going to take him down while now they burst it down into Objective Bounty, but they move it into Shockwave. Resto comes on in. Wallops him against the wall. The Gnar sent by an explosive cast, but as Kongyue tries to pick him up, CFO, the rest of them stand healthy. They look towards their enemies in the face. Who is the better J-Team, they scream. It's us!
The J-Team Deluxe version right here. They're still trying to corral the rest of Uniboy and Enzo as they fall down. This should be the game happening right now. Little V, 30 seconds respawn. Uniboy, 40 seconds. Enzo, the best he can do is cut the wave at this point. CFO are going to roar on to a very decisive 2-0. And once again, we have to remember, this was CFO toying with their draft. They were going for full late game, and they still crushed J-Team in the early phases regardless.
That was beautiful. That gameplay was amazing. All I can say about CFO is if they weren't your favorites coming into the series after the 2 games we've seen, your perspective better change. This was so easy for them. You know, Clement, I want to be respectful, but J-Team have not been the same J-Team that ended the split. You're talking a little bit about their final run. You know, big wins against DCG, against MFT, like great performance against Beyond Gaming. They even beat CFO in week 4. J-Team really rolled with momentum, and it's not a word I like saying because it's a bit of a cop-out, but it feels like J-Team were going to be that team that's kind of surprised us all as the 2nd seed. But CFO have come into this series, better drafts as you're talking about. The early game has been so great to watch, and especially in this game. Dude, solo laners of this team are scary. Like, they are still the best solo laners for a solid reason.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you. I personally feel like I've overestimated J-Team. I've said this before, but they don't have a very coherent and smooth game plan. I feel like their late game plan is actually completely incidental. It's still mainly on how well Uniboy does. If he does well, then you're sitting on a huge lead, and any strategy you go for looks a lot better than it actually is.
Yeah.
And I feel like, unfortunately, J-Team right now, after 2 games, they should be very much well aware that hard forcing a victory on Uniboy is likely not going to be possible against this opponent.
Kind of like what we saw at the start of the split. Any thoughts here, Clement? Because at the start of the split, J-Team were, you know, a bit more one-dimensional, right? We looked towards
They're more team fight oriented.
Yeah, that's right. And we didn't talk as much about Uniboy, about Kongyue. I remember saying, well, you know, Kongyue and Uniboy, they're an old duo. It feels like they've lost their edge. Towards the end of the split, they regained it. And we've almost gone back to step 1. Is that fair of me to say?
I think it's fair, but I will also say it's mainly just because of how good Gemini and Mission are. It's just like, you can gap the rest of the league, but you can't gap these two. And we've been discussing who is the best mid jungle in the PCS throughout the majority of this split. We've said Uniboy and Kongyue kind of rise to the top, but I feel like in this series, we have to remember a lot of the times CFO don't seem like they have a mid jungle because it's a stylistic choice. Yeah. They're playing for late game. They're playing for 4-1. Their mid jungle is for wave clear. It's not really for playing 2v2. If they want to, they can still turn it up. So I feel like CFO are just giving us a very good reminder of who the actual MVPs of the mid jungle used to be in prior splits.
That's true. And again, you know, come back to top side, rest body driver in that game. But we also know that when you were talking about the picks coming through, that we got counter pick for top. Rest got given the counter pick. He took the Nara in and absolutely destroyed. Even though, again, we saw strong lanes coming through from the rest of J-Team. So it is a shame that we're not getting as competitive a matchup as you know, we kind of hope for. But at the very least, we get rest here on what was such a great performance. As well, you know, Gemini out CSing, out rotating. Some really intelligent map play I think we can come into and talk about the vision control that was tracking... not Gemini, Clement. We're tracking Kongyue the whole time. This Lee Sin was always spotted out.
Yeah, the first rotation, I think, was very detrimental to Kongyue. So if we sort of rewind and kind of remind everyone what they did, Kongyue started on his bottom side, he went to the top, and then he looped around towards bottom side before doing the full clear because he did go for a gank onto the onto Mission's Orianna. And what that allowed... we saw from Gemini is he actually started to take over the top side. He wasn't spotted on his first clear. He was able to steal away the first Merkwolf camp and laid claim to top side and made sure that Rest was always playing with full knowledge, knowing that the jungler wasn't there. They crushed the top side, and he was still able to put pressure on bottom lane by having the virtue of just not being seen. So I feel like the first clear from Gemini was actually just far superior to that of Kongyue, and they were able to get a big advantage off of it.
I mean, from the get-go, right, there was never a window where J-Team had control in this game. Game number 1, we talked a little bit about how early game was so big for J-Team, but this time around, like, CFO took that and said, all right, well, this time we're gonna ring it. And I'm pretty proud of the performance here. It's a clean push through. It's like, simple, right?
Shin didn't even need to auto-attack for the most part.
Yeah.
Shin sitting at 5,000 damage. He's barely did more damage than the drop bear and Koala right there. And they're able to finish off just because Orianna is chasing people down. Like, Orianna was using dissonance on herself just for the speed up. Like, it's like, I don't really need to care about Get Excited Jinx. Pow Pow, you can go home. You know, go back to Zwan. We don't need you.
It's rare, isn't it? You don't normally see a Jinx do absolutely no damage, let alone like Koala getting close towards that. If Koala doesn't get MVP here, oh, wait, Clement, I have to understand. It's Rest. Oh, no. To be fair, Rest bodied lane. So you can completely understand this one. Koala gets a nice little mention. But Rest, again, like, this is why we've talked this guy up and why he's one of, if not the strongest top laner in the league.
I think one-on-one, he's just definitely the best there is.
Yep.
And if I think about how to counter Rest, it is in the fact that he's actually pretty easy to gank. He does have a bit of the shy in him, where we do see his early game is kind of wobbly. So I want to see a change in strategy. If you look at the draft, both the Aphelios and the Jinx have been up, so you can always have a hyper carry reliably to go for little V, and I feel like you should counter pick for top lane. Get Driver off of a defensive mindset. I feel like if you just put him on a blind Gragas in game 3 again, you're just going to lose the series 3-0. So you have to shake that lane up, give him some more resources, go for a more late game strategy, and hopefully J-Team can actually present us with a strong contested game.
Yeah, something, right? Because this is it's been a wash of a 2-game series so far. CFO, by far the strongest team, and now up against match point. We have to see if J-Team have something to pull out of the hat, or they'll go down into the lower bracket, and it will be semi-final time for CDBC Flying Oyster. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a break, but when we return, Game 3 on the horizon.